Hello and welcome back. Our today's topic is building relationship through communication. As we all know that because we people are social people and to be a part of society, we need to communicate with people. And here comes the importance of communication skills. The word communication skills has been driven from the Latin word communicare, that means to impart or to share. To share the ideas, feelings, knowledge, right? Whatever we have as a contentment to other people, we require communication skills. And that is why we need to communicate with people to be a part of society. Now, why do we need communication skills? Communication skills make us special and different than animals because we people are entitled as human beings after communicating with people. And there comes the importance of communication skills. It is said that to be a friend, you need to be a friend. If we require to be a friend of somebody, we need to be a friend of somebody then, right? You will have a friend to be a friend. Relationship is the state of being related. We can be related with people in the relationship only if we desire. We can communicate with people only if we need to communicate. So let us understand what is communication. Communication is the process of sharing ideas, views, facts, findings, feelings, expressions, and emotions from one person to another. Like suppose I am a human being, I require to contact with you and to be in touch with you, I require communication. And that is why we are said to be different than the animals and we are the human beings. Aristotle has said that we are social animals. Why do we need to be social? Because we are social animals as per Aristotle. Now let us understand what are the different types of communication skills. The first type of communication is intrapersonal communication. The word intra is within. So the intrapersonal communication is the communication that we do with ourselves. It's a within communication. We talk to ourselves first. We need to know, as per, like suppose we see a person, what do? Looking at a person, we start communicating with us. That means the 70% of communication that we do is with us. So we talk to ourselves, we keep on blabbering out things within. And that's what is intrapersonal communication, and that is the goal setting communication. We can think anything about others, for us, subject, school, college, parents, family, within. We can talk to ourselves, and it is the most important part of communication as we can decide so many things on the basis of intrapersonal communication skills. Now we have interpersonal communication. The word inter means two. Interpersonal communication means the communication which takes place between two individuals, and that is interpersonal communication. Example for interpersonal communication is employee and subordinate, boss and the manager, director and the junior director. So these are the examples of within communication. In personal life, we interact, like suppose we talk to our mother, we talk to our father, we talk to our teacher, we communicate with our friend, and this is what is interpersonal communication. Interpersonal communication can be held at some certain places. Example, sitting in the classroom talking to the one who is sitting next to me is interpersonal communication. Talking over the phone line, not conference, that's interpersonal communication because two people are involved into that communication. Now we have mass communication. As the word suggests, mass means multiple people. Many people are involved in this communication. One person speaks and so many people listen to that person. That's mass communication. Mass communication is a part of journalism and electronic media, where we take example of print media. One person writes a news and a number of people read that news, and that's called the interpersonal communication that the person has within and with somebody else, and then it is spread over the people, and number of people read that news and it becomes mass communication. Another example is radios. Radio channels where one radio jockey talks and number of people listen to him or her, and that's called the mass communication. Lecture is also such an example. When you study in your school, what do you think? Your teacher speaks and so many students sitting in the classroom listen, and that is what is mass communication, where many people listen to just one person. Now we have organizational communication. every organization has a set of communication. It can be peer group communication, it can be grapevine communication, or it can be organizational communication as well. So organizations have their own communication. Example, most of the work done in the organization is through written communication. So written form of communication is the essential part of communication. When we study LSRW, listening, speaking, reading and writing, where listening stands at first and writing stands at last. But when it comes to talk about the organizational communication, here the written communication stands at first, where it goes upside down. Why? Because of the documentation. We require the proofs. Alright, so for that case, we require the written communication, and here we come to know that organizational communication is most of the time in written communication. Example, like suppose you apply for a job, what do? You write one application, and that's called job application. So job application is sent to people, and that's a form of written communication, and first step for organizational communication. Next we have interpersonal communication, intrapersonal communication, mass communication, organizational communication, and now we have extrapersonal communication. What do you think? What is extrapersonal communication? Have you heard this word before? Alright, so extrapersonal communication means extra, means outside the world. People or animals or children, infants, those who do not understand a language, in order to make them understand what we wish to convey, we need to have an interaction, and that interaction is extrapersonal communication. Example is, when you talk to a dog, what kind of language do you speak? Primarily, if the dog is not tamed dog, or the dog is not your tamed dog, how do you interact with that dog? Do you talk directly to the dog, sit down? Does he listen to you? No. So what do you say? Either you use the language or you use the verbal communication, which has no meaning. Example is shh, shh, shoo. These are the words which we use. Otherwise, when we talk to infants, very small children, what happens? How do we interact? Because they are not in access of the language. They have not yet learned any language. So how do we talk to infants? We say, what happened? And we change our verbal communication. That's what is extrapersonal communication. Right. Let us now understand the flow of communication, which is also known as the channels of communication. In an organization, when we start working, in order to build relationship, we need to know the channels of communication, means whom to talk, how to talk, and what to talk. So where we have protocols also. So let us understand the protocols for the channels of communication, or the flow of communication in an organization. So the first is upward communication. In order to build relationship at hierarchy, we need to know the upward communication, which is a linked or channel-wise communication. It is step-by-step communication, where we need to have a communication with people those who are sitting at hierarchy. Example, like suppose I want to talk to the senior most position holder employee of the organization. What would I do? I would interact to my senior will interact to his or her senior, and then that person will further follow up. And that is called the upward communication. Next is downward communication. It is opposite to upward communication. Downward communication is the communication which is held from hierarchy to the subordinate. Means unlike upward communication, which start from the junior most position to the senior most position, it starts with the senior most position and comes down to the junior position, and this is called the downward communication. We can build relationship with our subordinates, knowing how to talk and how to talk, what to talk in the downward communication. The third one we have is horizontal communication. As the name suggests, it is the lateral communication, which is on the parallel background. It is known the communication talked between the same level employees, like a manager talking to the manager, director talking to a director, an employee talking to another employee. That's called the horizontal communication, where we have to have the communication in between the same level people. That's the horizontal communication. The last one communication is the diagonal communication. What do you understand by the diagonal communication? Name is suggesting that this is a diagonal communication, which is a direct communication. When an employee working at the junior most position wants to talk to the senior most position holder person in an organization directly, that's called the diagonal communication. But it also has a protocol, and protocol is appointment. That can be telephonic appointment or an appointment through an email. So we can have an appointment with a person for building relationship. Now let us understand what is the importance of building relationship. Why do we require to build relationship through communication? The first and the far most important thing is the healthy environment. In order to maintain a healthy environment around us in an organization where we work, we need to have healthy relationship shared with the people whom we are working with. Suppose the day when the employees working with you in the organization, means your colleagues, stop talking to you. Suppose the day when your friends whom you go around with, they stop talking to you. Suppose the day when you go back to your home, your parents do not talk to you. Suppose the day when people whom you always spend most of your time with, they stop talking to you. How would you feel? Certainly you will feel bad. So that is why, in order to avoid these all discrepancies, we need to have good and healthy environment, and that is only can be maintained with the help of building relationship through communication, effective communication. Now we have stress reduction. What happens when we have some problems in life? Yes, of course, we all are human beings. We all have problems. So we have to have a solution also. Who can give us the solution? Maybe the people whom we are working with, maybe the friends whom we sit in between most, or maybe the family members whom we live in among with. So they people can help us out the most for solving the problems we have in the life. So that is called the stress reduction. We can reduce the stress with the help of building healthy relationship with the people with the help of communication skills. Now we have context-based communication. It helps us to know what is the context and how can we talk within the context. Context means the subjective communication. We need to know what is the subject on which we are going to explore the possibilities of communication, talking or interacting with a person in an organization or elsewhere. For that, we can only know that context-based communication can only improve our relationship. As suppose you talk to a person who is not from your culture. How would you talk to that person who doesn't belong to your culture and is from different context, different communication? You need to know what is communication held in his or her context. And believe me, the very moment you will feel that that person starts listening to you effectively. And that's called the relationship on the basis of context-based communication. Now, feel-good factor. When everything is good around you, you feel happy, you feel exulting. So we exult on the basis of knowing that the people around us are happy, the environment is healthy, people talk contextually correct, people know us, people take care of our emotions as well. We feel good, and for the feel good factor, we need to build up the relationship, and that can only be held with the help of healthy and effective communication skills. Now we have healthy communication. Now, what is healthy communication? Healthy communication is that communication which comes up with a gladness. We become happy talking to people, people become happy talking to us, and it can only be held with the help of knowing what is communication, and hence we can improve our relationship in organizations or in personal life. Let us understand how to improve the communication. For that, we need to know the process of communication. For the process of communication, we require two parties, a sender and a receiver. As if I am working in an organization, I'd require my senior to listen to me. For that, I am the sender. The first, the far most important thing is the ideation. We need to know that idea which we want to convey to break the ice of the communication. So we require the ideation. After that, we need to know the encoding. Encoding is related to knowing the language, knowing the mode of transmission of the topic or the message. So we'll be converting. Suppose we can take example, I want to write an email, I want to talk to that person directly, I want to convey the message via text message. So this is all is encoding. We will understand not only this but also selecting the mediums mode. Example, I want to connect with another person in English language, in French language, in German language, or any other language, right? Formal language or informal language. That is what is the encoding. And then we have medium or the channel. Medium or the channel is the helping hand which helps us to transmit the message to the receiver, and the recipient gets to know what about is the message. And then receiver receives the message. Once the receiver receives the message, then the relationship starts, because of the important part was for the receiver to receive the message. We wanted to convey the message to the receiver. Receiver receives the message. Receiver decodes the message. Now the receiver tries to decode the message. He or she also tries to respond to you. Alright, so in order to give you a response, that person tries to know the mode of the communication, knowing the language. Does he or she wants to reply in the same language you talk with or in? And then after that, person transmits or sends the message. Now that's called the feedback. That person gives you the feedback. When it comes to send the feedback, we have so many barriers in communication, and here the barriers become the barriers in building healthy relationship. These are the barriers for building healthy relationship, means which become the hindrance in building relationship. So let us understand the barriers to communication. The first barrier we have is the intrapersonal barrier. As we have already studied what is intrapersonal communication, that's a within communication. So similarly, these barriers are the within barriers. We build these barriers within. We start building these barriers inside us. Example is inferiority complex. In many cases, we feel that we cannot talk to that person as we are inferior. I feel I am inferior talking to you. Would I ever be able to build up a relationship with you? The answer is no. I won't be able to have an interaction with you because I am not confident in having a communication with you. So that's called the intrapersonal barrier. Next is superiority complex. Some people have superiority complex. I am superior. Why should I talk to this person? That person would never talk to you. And that's called the intrapersonal barrier. Next is interpersonal barrier. Barrier between two people. Means when two people do not share a comfortable zone, the people do not talk. When we do not fall in the intimate or personal zone with a person, we cannot have a healthy relationship through communication. And here we have a barrier which become a hindrance in exploring the possibilities of having good relationship with another person. And that's called the interpersonal barrier. Barrier between two people. Now we have semantic barrier. Semantic barrier is the barrier which comes up with the language. Example, the words which I speak to you are not being understood by you. That's called the denotation and connotation. The connotative meaning is different. Denotative meaning means the direct meaning. Connotative meaning means the perceived meaning. Suppose I say to you, there was a huge crowd at the bank. In some context, you will understand there was a huge crowd on the riverbank. On other context, you will understand there was a huge crowd on the bank where we transfer the money from, or withdraw the money from, or we go for the account's sake. That's called the bank. So this is called the connotative meaning, means perceived meaning. So in this, semantic barriers become the hindrance where we have a different connotative meaning. Apart from that, we have a little linguistic problem also. We cannot talk to a person in the language that person understands. So the usage of proper words and the perceived meanings without knowing a culture we talk to, that becomes a semantic barrier. Next we have a psychological barrier. Psychological barrier is the barrier which is a barrier we make within, means it is related to our mind and the process of our mental situation. That depends on our education, upbringing, friend circle, family culture and other things. How have we been brought up and where we have spent most of the time of our life. Means our friends, how the way they communicated with us we have already made a mind accordingly. That's called the mindset. So we have psychological barrier which becomes a hindrance. Example, I say to you, I cannot teach you or you cannot learn from me as you think that I am not a good faculty. The moment you will start thinking I am not a good faculty, you will never be able to study. That's called the psychological barrier. When your father says something to you and you think that my father is unnecessarily giving preaches, what happens? Do you listen to your father properly? No. Why? Because of your mind has given you instructions to not to listen to your father. And you cannot build healthy relationships because if you do not want to talk to your father. Remember, something is better than nothing. So have an interaction, learn something from your father, listen to people, do not have psychological barrier. Please create the boundaryless communication, which has no boundaries. You can talk to people out of the box. The communication will be effective. Now we have socio-cultural barriers. Socio-cultural barriers means in a society we have people from multitude of cultures. Today we are into a global village. This context in which we live today is the global context. We are living in a global village where number of people from different countries daily come in our country. We talk to people from different cultures, not only countries. Do you think that your own motherland has only one culture? Every family, every member of a family has a different culture. And that is why we need to have socio-cultural barrier. The different cultures, the belongings. Example, your parents got education in a different era and you are getting education in modern era. So contemporary knowledge varies from the knowledge which was ancient knowledge. There have been some upgradation, there have been some changes, but nobody understands. To fill up the gap or to bridge up this gap, we need to understand the socio-cultural barriers which can tell us how to improve the communication for holding a good relationship with the people, those who are with us. Now we have technical barrier. The last barrier is the technical barrier. Today we are into technology driven era. We cannot do anything without having technology. So we have technological barriers also because everything has pros and cons. So technology also has some cons. Let us understand what are the cons of technology. Example, suppose I am talking to you and always the communication is not successful because if over the phone line the network is not connecting. So I cannot have a healthy relationship because if I am so far from you, then I cannot talk or be in touch with you always. Because after all, this is technology. It can fail also. It's not human beings communication. So this is the technological barrier. Now we have building relationship through interaction. We can have healthy relationship with the help of communication, and communication is a part of interaction between people. So we can interact with people. What happens when an infant doesn't understand you? How do you talk? It's a very simple question. How do you talk to an infant when he doesn't understand your communication? Do you talk to that infant in verbal language? Or you try to differentiate the language? Yes. In order to interact with an infant, we try to adopt all these strategies, all the methods to talk to the infant. And why don't we change our language when we talk to another person? Because we are grown-up people and we are talking to a grown-up person, isn't it? Yes, it is. So here we need to understand the basic need of a human is communication or interaction because we are social animals. As we change a language talking to an infant, we must also change a language talking to a person who is a grown-up elder. So for this, we need to understand why or why not we talk to that person, and we have 5W1H concept. So for building relationship through interaction and to break the interaction, we have 5W1H concept. How can we interact, what to interact and all. So 5W, where the W's stand for why, who, where, when and what, and H stands for how. When we come to know about 5W1H concept, knowing what are the interrogative words, we can correct the communication and we can interact with people. We need to know why are we talking with this person, what is the need, what can we talk, who we are talking to, who is that person, he or she, Where is that person from? Knowing the person's background. Is that person from literate background, educated background, different country, which country, and when should we talk to that person? What is the time which is correct to talk? Knowing this, and then how to talk. How shall we break the ice? That is called 5W1H concept. Now we have the different. Now we need to understand. Shall I? Now we shall understand the topic culture. Believe me, it is a very interesting topic, knowing about the culture. Culture is what which we transfer from present generation to the next generation. When what we have as something with us, we want to transfer that to the next generation as a part of our family tradition. That's called the culture. One of the two or three most complicated words in English is culture. Means culture is one of the most difficult words found in English, which is complicated means we cannot define culture that easily. It cannot be defined that easily. Culture is such a vast term which cannot be bound into words. It is a boundaryless experimental topic where we can experiment. As much as you'll experiment, you'll know more about the culture. So this is called the culture. Now the best definition we can have in culture is given by Edward B. Taylor. He was the anthropologist. So the anthropologist Edward B. Taylor has offered a broad definition which states that the complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom and any other capabilities and habits acquired by a man as a member of society is called culture, which means the culture refers to the art, law, education, customs, social norms, food habits, clothing, religion and rituals. So let us understand the first which is the art. So what is the art? What do you understand the art is? Art varies from one country to another, one state to another state and one culture to another culture, because culture varies from one family to another, one person to another. So the first part of culture's art is architecture. Architecture is a prominent part of art which varies. Like example is architecture varies from Arab. We have Arabic architecture, we have Mughal architecture, we have European architecture and we have contemporary architecture. Contemporary means present, which varies every now and then from one country to another and which is a global component also. We have different art forms, means dance forms. Dance is another component of art. It is also a part of recreation. Let me tell you one thing. When it comes to talk about culture, in every culture people had to do something for recreation. In order to do something for recreation, they started doing the art. And art can include architecture, which was now the mature form. Architecture is the mature form of the art. Primarily they started with a little form which became mature and became architecture. Now we have dance forms. We have dance forms also. Example, primary. Let's go back. What was the primary stage of dance? Rock and roll, disco. Now today we have Latin dance. We have salsa. We have samba. We have classical Indian forms of dance. We have belly dancing and belly dancing, and we have contemporary dance forms also. What are these? These are the recreation forms of the art and which become an essential part of the culture. Now next we have is sculpture. Sculpture is also a part of arts which varies from different countries to different countries. Example is Europe and India. Indian people have their own sculpture. India has its own sculpture and Europe has its own sculpture. Another example is African masks. African masks are different from the other masks. So that's called the sculpture. We have its variation in the culture. Next is painting. How can we forget about talking? Paintings in arts. Where in paintings we have the basic one. Let's talk about paintings. In Europe, once you'll go, you will see that there are museums full of paintings. A number of people have a footfall every day for paintings exhibition. That's a kind of recreation, which is an important part of culture. You'll go to different places, you'll find that people have different interests, and painting is one of the most important factor which becomes an idea for the interest and their own education. In paintings, we talk about French paintings. French people are supposed to be known across the globe for their interest into activities. So they are the culturally rich people in terms of paintings also. We talk about now law. Law is such a term which varies from one country to another, certainly. Let's talk about what different countries we have and what different laws they have. We have stringent laws in Arab countries. In Arabic countries, we have stringent laws. These laws are stringent means if somebody does something wrong, that person will be punished according to the rules, and these rules won't be varying at all. Now, strict rules in USA and Europe. Strict rules in the sense of government policies are the government policies, cannot change at any cost. There is no reluctance, there is no leniency in the rules and regulations of government and other privatization. These are the strict laws in USA and Europe. Switzerland, a few examples I'm setting for the laws, different laws which you might not be knowing. Let us know different laws which may be a kind of cultural shock for you. Let's talk about the law which is in Switzerland, which is forbidding girls to wear pants. The girls cannot wear pants. It's in Switzerland. Next is Germany. Germany has a law which states that pillows are labeled as passive weapons. So the pillows are passive weapons. This is another law in Germany. Now Greece, banning the electronic games in Greece. The country Greece has banned the electronic games. Primarily in 2012, they banned the only games, means video games. But later on December 8, 2003, they banned all the electronic games. In China, there is one child policy. They cannot have two children. So these are the rules and laws which vary from one country to another. Now, next point is customs. We all are culturally very rich people, and we suppose that our culture is the better one culture or the best culture. So we have different cultures to be followed. Now cultures vary from continent to continent. In Europe, it is customary to smile and greet while meeting another person. So when we meet one another person, we greet with a smile in Europe. In Japan, it's customary to bow down while greeting a person. So when we meet a person in Japan, we take our hands straight to the thigh and we bow down. That's the culture and it's a part of custom. Next, in India, when we meet a person, we join our hands together and we say namaste. This is a part of culture. So these are the customs which vary from one person to another, one country to another, which is really an important part of cultures. Now, social norms. Every society has its own norms, and which are termed as social norms. We all are social animals. As I told you, primarily Aristotle has said that human beings are the social animals. So we all are social animals. So in order to avoid the anarchy amongst us, we have some social norms which keep us together, and the norms keep us bound to each other. So this is why the social norms are important. What are the social norms? These are the norms of society. First norm is marriage. We have different marriages. Every culture has its different social norms of marriage, right? Example, would the boy leave the home or the girl leave the home? Polygamy, monogamy. Polygamy is the marriage which is held with one or more than one grooms or bridegrooms, right? Bride. Or monogamy, where just one person get married, one girl and a boy. Monogamy. Marriages of homosexuals, homosexual boys or homosexual girls getting married, which can be a taboo in some certain countries. People cannot understand it, but another country understands. So this is called variation in cultures we have. So this is a social norm which we have to take care of. Some countries take dowry or give dowry. In some countries, bridegroom's family gives the dowry to the bride's family. In some countries, bride's family gives the dowry to the bridegroom's family. Dowry is a kind of gift which we give to the other family. So this is called the marriage, which is a social norm. Now we have patriarchal society. Patriarchal society means talking to the people, giving respect to elders, being in touch with elders, living with elders. We have nuclear families and joint families. Some countries have a concept of nuclear families, and some countries give preference to the joint families. That's called the patriarchal society. And this is all about giving respect in society to the elder people. Now celebration, festivals and celebrations. Since we all are into social world, we need to celebrate the festivals also. So we have, and this is also a part of our recreation. We need to recreate, we need to celebrate the terms. That's called the celebrations, which vary from one person to another, one country to another. It can be, in some countries, in order to celebrate some festival, they kill animals. In some countries, people enjoy the blood of snakes. In some country, when people give feast, the host gives the heart of the snake to eat to the guest of the honor of the party. That's also a celebration. Now we have PDA, public display of affection. So we have public display of affection, which is acceptable in Europe and USA. Maybe in some other countries like India and other, in Arab, in Japan, the public display of affection is prohibited. We cannot hug and do some other activity with the people openly on the streets. Now, next we have is food habit. Food is the essential component of society. We all, the people, those who are from different cultures, are known for the different food habits. We like different foods, we have different strategies for having foods. So we have variation in understanding the concept of vegetarian and non-vegetarian concept. Let us understand. I will set my own example. One day I went to a family over a dinner, and I am a vegetarian. Let me tell you what are vegetarians and who all are non-vegetarian. What is non-vegetarian? Vegetarian is a human or a person who eats only vegetables, pulses, grams, rice, wheat, only vegetables or fruits. Nothing made up of flesh of any animal. That's called the vegetarian concept. In non-vegetarian concept, people enjoy flesh of animals, meat, chicken. So this is called the non-vegetarian concept. So I went to join a family over a dinner. The people have heaps of meat. They were celebrating because in their culture, the celebration means enjoying meat. The people offered me some pieces of meat in a bowl. I simply said, "I'm sorry ma'am, I'm a vegetarian. I eat only vegetables and fruits." The lady who was offering the food to me said no problem. She took out the pieces of meat from the bowl, left the soup into it and said, "Now you enjoy, it's vegetarian." Which was totally different, because the vegetarian concept says if something which has touched non-vegetarian or something which has been cooked in the water which is non-vegetarian is considered to be non-vegetarian, means the water will be non-vegetarian later on once we'll be taking out the pieces of meat from it. This is a different concept which varies from one culture to another culture. Now next we have this style of cooking. How do we cook? Some people like spicy, some countries, some people, some communities like tangy food. So this is how we cook, and what we cook varies. Eating habits and styles. Eating habits may vary. Some people may sit on floor and eat there. Some people may sit on dining table and eat there. Some people may sit on sofa set and enjoy the food. Some people may eat, some cultures may allow the people to have food with hands. Some cultures may allow people to have food with fork and knife, and some people may use chopsticks. And that's called the variation in the culture. As in the food habits, we have different eating habits and styles. The next component that we have is number of time meal is consumed. How many times a day do we consume the meal? Because nowadays people say it is, doctors say it is advisable to have food in fragmented way, means in different intervals. The next component of understanding the culture is clothing. Clothing varies from one country to another, one culture to another, one family to another, one tribe to another, one race to another race. And that's called the clothing. Do you think that you stand different when you go to another country because of your clothing strategies? We all have our own traditional attire. So we first of all understand in dresses, we have traditional dresses. Example, the men in Scotland wear check woolen skirt. So how do you find the Scotland men? They wear check woolen skirt, though they are men. But in other countries, people wear different clothes. They may wear something which is different than others. In India, we talk about the women wear sari, which is a different attire, makes the Indian women different than the other women. In Africa, the Africans wear traditional dress with a headgear. They wear a traditional dress with a headgear. I told you, Indian women wear sari, that's traditional dress. And we have international attire which has globally been accepted, that's called the international business suit. We have business attire. Men wear business suit as I am wearing, and girls wear business suit with skirts either or the trouser itself. The next component of culture is religion. We have different religion all across the globe. Different religion which have been most celebrated across the globe. Now we understand mainly Islam and Christianity. Islam and Christianity is practiced in different parts of the globe. We have all across the globe people celebrating and practicing Islam and Christianity. In India and Nepal, main religion is Hinduism. Hinduism is a religion which is most celebrated in India and in Nepal. And this religion has also a subdivision which is practiced all across the globe. Every religion has its own subdivisions. Example, Christianity has a division. We have Protestants, Catholic, Methodists, and so on, so Baptists. So we have these many differentiations in the subdivisions of the religion. After religion, we have rituals. So let us understand the rituals, the most important component of culture. Rituals on which we have a culture totally based upon. Rituals differ from country to country. We have different countries where we have different rituals. Rituals are context-based. Context-based, we'll talk about context-based communication later on. I'll give you a brief introduction of context-based communication or context-based cultural variation. Anthropologists have divided the globe into two contexts, high context and low context. And the culture varies from one context to another context. So these are rituals or context-based. Rituals are related to marriage ceremonies. Different marriage ceremonies have different rituals. They may have different attire to be worn during marriages. They may have different rituals. Examples: day marriage, night marriage. Marriage where people, those who are relatives, are invited. Marriages where people, those who are not known to people, are invited. And different so on. So we have rituals related to religion. Every religion has its own different ritual. Let's say some people put, you can say, one sticker on the head which is related to their religion. In their religion it is supposed to be done. And different other religions have different own rituals they perform. In some countries, some rituals can be considered as taboo also. Some people perform some activities which can be considered as taboo in different cultures. Example, um, hitting the children as a part of culture, suppressing some body parts are considered to be the rituals in some countries, or some tribes which are considered to be taboo in different countries. Now we have morning's rituals. In morning's rituals, we have example, in order to give respect to the departed soul, good food is served and some kind of dance forms are performed in Africa. Example, when somebody dies in Africa, some good food is served to people to give a final bye to the departed soul and to give respect also. Now, next part is intercultural communication. Let us understand what is intercultural communication. Intercultural communication is the process of sending and receiving messages between people whose cultural backgrounds could lead them to interpersonal verbal and non-verbal communication, which is interpreted differently with the sign language maybe, right? So this is, we can say, intercultural communication is the communication which is held between two cultures, as the name suggests, interpersonal cultural communication. So it is intercultural between two cultures. Two cultures, they may have different verbal or non-verbal communication. They have sign language. They may have some different language. Example, I'd put forward one example of non-verbal communication. Example, suppose I show you a thumb. What does this mean to you? If I show you my thumb, in some countries it can be understood as well done or good luck. This can be the symbol for this, thumbs up. In different countries, as in Africa and in some suburbs of India, this is considered to be not to be done. It is an offensive gesture or a swearing gesture. So understanding the intercultural communication is one of the most important component of cultural communication. Understanding the basic difference of cultural communication is important, and that will let us know what is the intercultural communication held within different two cultures. And there are different advantages of multicultural workforce places today. As I told you earlier also, we are into a global market. We are into a global village where we have different countries merging their businesses in different countries. So we have multinational companies today where we need to understand what is the importance of verbal, non-verbal communication held in different two countries. And here we have the intercultural communication. Now we have some challenges of intercultural communication. What are the different challenges? So the first challenge we have is stereotyping. Different is, second one is ethnocentrism. Next is cultural sensitivity. And next is cultural shock, cultural pluralism, and xenophobia. So these are the challenges of intercultural communication. So first let us understand the stereotyping. And stereotyping is an idea or belief many people have about a thing or person or a group that is based upon how they look on outside, behavior, etc., which may be untrue or may be partly true. Means stereotyping is one's mindset. It is my mindset about a group, a person, a thing on the basis of the outer appearance. How is the person looking? That is called stereotyping. Let us understand a few examples of stereotyping. Few examples for stereotyping. Suppose, what if somebody says colored people are good or bad? Maybe my experience or that person's experience is varied than the other experiences. So just on behalf of meeting a person, we cannot say that all people are same. Stating colored people are good or bad is a stereotype. Men or women, we say men are better or we say women are better. So stating this comment as a stereotype. Sexual stereotypes. We talk about sexual stereotypes, means in some countries homosexuality is prohibited, homosexual activities are different, or these sexual activities are different, polygamy, monogamy. These are all the stereotypes which we have in the different countries. Now we have all young group of people are irresponsible. What if somebody said that young people are irresponsible? Is it correct? There can be some people, those who have to be just given a chance, and they can prove that they are better than others and they are better than elders. They are the most responsible people. That's called the stereotype we have. Next we have is all old people are boring. What if someone says to you that all old people are boring? Maybe your experience with an elder person is really nice. That person has been really nice to you. So the experience will be different. And that will be the stereotype if we say all old people are boring. Not giving young people a chance. Number of companies, number of people say that the fresher should not be given a chance. Stating that the young people should not be given a chance is a stereotype. Women are bad drivers. What if somebody says to you that women are bad drivers? Stating this is wrong or incorrect because if this is a stereotype, they can be best drivers also. The next we have is ethnocentrism. Let us talk about ethnocentrism now. And ethnocentrism is judging another culture solely by the values and standards. It is a one's own culture. Means if we talk about other person's culture on the basis of my culture, this is ethnocentrism. The word ethnocentrism has been driven from ethno and centrism. Ethno means culture, centrism means centric. Being centered to one's culture is ethnocentrism. What if I judge your culture or one group of culture through my group of culture? That's called the ethnocentrism. Every culture is different. And what if we judge our culture different than others' culture, and we say, as we all human beings have a tendency to state that my culture is the best culture. Understanding your culture, the best culture all across the globe, is the ethnocentrism. Now let us understand a few examples of ethnocentrism. The examples for ethnocentrism are racism, people fighting for race. When people talk about their own race, they fall under ethnocentrism. I will not select this person because if this person doesn't belong to my race. There have been many wars in the world because of racism, and those were the ethnocentric races based wars. We have religion. I will not give chance to this person to speak because this person doesn't belong to my religion. This statement will be ethnocentrism because I am being ethnocentric. I am being best to my culture. My religion is the best religion in the world and your religion is not as good as my religion. Stating this is the ethnocentrism. And the next point for ethnocentrism is ethnic background. Talking about one's ethnicity, my ethnic background is better than yours, is the example for ethnocentrism. Now we talk about cultural sensitivity. We all must be sensitive towards others' cultures and knowing every culture, as every culture has its own importance and respect. Cultural sensitivity means being aware that cultural differences and similarities exist and have an effect on values, learning and behavior. We have different cultural activities which vary from one culture to another. They can be different and they can be similar also. Two cultures can have different similarities and differences also. And this is just one thing which we need to understand. And once we will understand this term, we will be culturally sensitive. We will understand that different people have different cultures and we can know about them. Today's global market can give us a chance to come across people from different cultures. When we'll be knowing about their culture, we will be culturally very much sensitive. And next we have is cultural shock. Cultural shock is the sense of confusion and uncertainty, sometimes with feelings of anxiety that may affect people exposed to an alien culture or environment without etiquette preparation. When somebody is exposed to a different culture without preparation, without knowing, that culture would be an alien culture for you. Suppose, what if I say to you to go to a different country which you have never heard the name before, and you reach there without preparing about the country? that will be a cultural shock. Let us see some examples of cultural shock. The examples for cultural shock is taking a culture for granted. What if I have taken a culture for granted, I've been to that culture, and I found that culture is absolutely different? What would you feel? Examples of two different cultures I'm setting ahead is eating habits. In Europe or in UK, finishing the meal from the plate is the etiquette. And whereas in Chinese culture, we need to leave a little food in the bowl while eating or in the plate. So one UK person goes to one Chinese cultural place, that person finishes the food totally. And Chinese people interpreted that this person requires more food. The people ordered more food. And once the food comes, the UK person, as an etiquette, finishes the food again, and that person was served the food again. So he was not needing. That's called taking a culture for granted. That person took the culture for granted, did not study, and suffered a lot. We have different dining manners. And next we have dressing sense. People from different countries, different cultures have different dressing sense. Let us understand cultural shock. Cultural shock is a sense of confusion and uncertainty, sometimes with feelings of anxiety that may affect people exposed to an alien culture or environment without etiquette preparation. When we are exposed to a different culture without preparation, we feel that as if we are alien to that culture, right? Or that culture is an alien culture to us. And that's called the cultural shock. We cannot adopt the culture, or we find that culture is little different or a lot different than that of our culture. That's called the cultural shock. We have few examples of cultural shock. Sometimes people take the culture for granted. While going to a different country without preparation, we feel that we cannot be unknown to that culture because there can be some similarities in all the cultures. But for the contradiction, I'll set one example. One person from UK goes to China to attend a meeting. That person took Chinese culture for granted, went there and set for eating, and where we have different dining manners also and different dining activities. In UK, it is said that you need to finish your meal before you get up, and that's the etiquette. And in China, the etiquette say that you need to leave a little bit in the bowl, otherwise the host will think that you are still hungry and need more. UK person, as a culture and without preparation, ate the entire food. The Chinese offered more food. Second time also, as a part of etiquette, the person from UK finished the food. The Chinese another time filled the bowl. And third time, when he was tired, he said, please, enough, I don't want more food. And then Chinese person said, in our culture, it is said that you need to not to finish the bowl or meal, because that would be said that the guest requires more food. That's called the taking a culture for granted. That person took the culture for granted and thought that dining manners would be same for all the cultures, and that was not correct. Now we have dining manners that I told you which has a difference. We have dressing sense. Different countries, different cultures have different dressing sense, which can give us a cultural shock also. In some countries, women are supposed to cover their face, hands and every part of the body. Each and every part of the body, including the eyes, with net. Suppose a person from that country has never been exposed to a European or one American country. So that person goes to such countries and finds that the women are wearing what they want to wear, will have certainly a cultural shock, because that person was new to that culture, wasn't knowing what is culture of that country. Now we have to understand cultural pluralism. Before we understand cultural pluralism, we need to understand what is the importance of cultural pluralism. Cultural pluralism is important because we people are emerging our business in different countries, and the emergence of businesses in different countries makes us a global person. We need to understand the intercultural communication and sensitivity of cultures. So the cultural pluralism is a practice of accepting multiple cultures on their own rules and laws. That's called the cultural Pluralism. When one person adopts or accepts the cultures from different countries, maybe that person doesn't leave his own culture, because we people cannot leave our own culture that easily. That person is culturally plural, and this activity is termed as cultural pluralism. How to be culturally plural? We can be culturally plural on avoiding assumptions. People generally set assumptions, set on wrong assumptions, with notions. So we have wrong notions, set on wrong assumptions. We need to avoid these notions, and then we can be culturally plural. Next, we have avoiding judgments. Stop being judgmental. If we are being judgmental, looking at a person, passing judgments, passing comments, that's called being stereotype. And we cannot be culturally plural if we are stereotypes. Acknowledge distinction. If something is different, we need to acknowledge the differentiation and distinction. Something is distinct, understand and acknowledge it. And that's called the culturally pluralism. Now, cultural sensitivity. If we are culturally little sensitive, then we are culturally plural. Understanding the cultural sensitivity is cultural pluralism. Avoiding bad stereotyping. We have two types of stereotypes, bad or good. By the way, we need to avoid both, bad or good. But then yes, we need to understand that bad stereotyping is the worst kind of stereotyping. So we need to avoid ethnocentrism, stop being ethnocentric. The next topic we have is xenophobia. The word xenophobia means the fear of strangers, fear of foreigners. Some people have a fear of foreigners, and they people are xenophobic. We need to avoid xenophobia to be culturally plural, because xenophobia stops us to be in touch with the people from different cultures, as we find that our culture is better and we can be harmed with the people from different cultures. So when we want to be in touch with other people from different cultures, we need to be out of xenophobia. So here we understood that culture is a varied form which varies from one country to another, one person to another. In fact, in a family of four members, all four members will have different cultures on the basis of their own education and systems.